Good morning, IOBSE. My name is Alexandria Hampton, here with another check in from the Early Career Professionals Committee. I have my good friend Bobby Lou Saint with me.
Hi, Alex.
So, hey, Bobby, we're here to discuss Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, and I have a few questions for you.
Awesome. What do you got?
Share with us some of the key cultural traditions or customs that are important to you as an Asian Pacific American.
Yeah, so I mean, for me specifically, I'm a Pacific Islander. I'm half Filipino, and as a Filipino American, I could say my family celebrates a lot of the same cultures that we do here in the U.S., and I know that my family in the Philippines does as well. A lot of it is rooted in most of the Roman Catholic type of holidays and celebrations. So obviously, like Christmas and Easter. Um, and then I would say another one that stands out for me is like food. Food is a big cultural thing for us, and we love to eat. Filipinos love to eat, and our food is a mixed bag of influence that comes from Spanish culture, along with Chinese culture and some Indian culture as well. But then there's also like a mixed bag of other cultures that make up our overall food culture that we eat. So there's a lot of diversity in how we eat food. Rice is a staple for us. White rice is something we eat probably every single day, and it's probably one of my toughest things to eat or to not eat. When I'm always on a diet. Um, but I think the biggest one as well, though, is like the family experience within the Filipino culture is really big. And when I say that, it's just not your immediate family. It's like your aunts and your uncles are almost like your mom and dad, and then like all of your cousins are like your brothers and sisters. So for me, my cousins' kids, they look up to me like an uncle. They call me Tio, and or Tito, and then for the women in my family, they call them Tita, and all my cousins' kids are nieces and nephews to me. So sometimes when I'm talking to, everyone else, it's kind of hard to explain that. But for us, we're very close, and we spend all the holidays together, like we're one big family.
That's awesome. So you mentioned a couple things. Number one, I'm a foodie too, and I love rice. Rice is my downfall.
Good for
That's
you.
probably why I was in the gym this morning. Number two, you mentioned family, and you mentioned how family is important. So that's going to kind of tie into my next question. How has your Asian Pacific American heritage influenced your personal values and your beliefs?
Yeah, so I think for me, it's the biggest one that stands out for me is like respecting your elders. It's a significant influence coming from my family. I know that, and it bleeds over into everything else that I do. So number one, just having respect for people in general, but especially for your elders. I grew up where in our family, when you were greeting your Lola, which is like your grandmother, you took her right hand with your right hand and you placed it to your forehead when you were greeting her. So it wasn't just like "Hi, Grandma." It was like "Hi, Lola." You grab her hand and you bow and you put her hand to your forehead. And growing up that way has influenced me significantly in being able to have number one respect for others, period, and then number two just respecting elders and being there to support elderly people as much as possible because that's the way we treat our elders. Um, and then the family values thing is also a big influence in my life because of how we treat each other, how we treat each other's kids. We look out for each other. We help to take care of each other. I know that bleeds into the rest of my life. So I would challenge most of everyone out there. Like if you have a Filipino person in your life, most of the time they're like your best friend. I
Mhm.
guarantee you probably know their whole family. And when you met their family, they welcome you with open arms. And the other thing too is if you're on a diet going to a Filipino party, you might as well skip the diet for the day because most likely they're going to feed you. And for me, it's like when you do show up to those parties, you got to eat. It's not one of those things where you can try not to eat. Oh, I'm on a diet, this and that. No, you're going to have to eat because it's going to be pretty hard for you not to, because they're going to make sure that you eat and eat well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love to eat. That's probably why Asian food is one of my favorite foods.
It is for me too, but I grew up that way. So,
Um, But you spoke about the elderly, and you spoke about like just how you respect them and how you greet them. And so, are there any notable figures from Asian Pacific heritage, American history that has inspired you or had a significant impact on your life?
Yeah, I think for me the biggest one, I'm an athletic type person. I love sports. So Manny Pacquiao is by far my favorite boxer. And a lot of other people look at me, and we want to talk about Mayweather, and we want to talk about Ali, and we want to talk about Mike Tyson, which are all great boxers. But the story of Manny Pacquiao and where he comes from in the Philippines, a lot of people don't understand how poor he really was growing up. And then on top of that, how he actually fought his way to being successful. Um, for me, is probably the most impactful Filipino and boxer and athlete that influences me, and just showing like all of us, what the capabilities are when you put your mind to something, when you have the family values. He comes from a small city outside of or not even a city, a small town in the Philippines, and moved to Manila to work to help take care of his family at 14 years old, right? And then it is there that he started boxing and started making a living that way. And to this day, he's still giving back to not just his family but his community. He's in government. He's been in the Senate in the Philippines as well. So he's always someone who's always giving back, even outside of all of the success that he's had. So for me, Manny Pacquiao is probably the most significant person.
That's awesome. And he has an amazing story. I remember watching a documentary on him a few years back, and his story is impressive. So I can
Yes.
completely understand why you selected him. So can you speak to any challenges or stereotypes that you faced as an Asian Pacific and African American, and how did you overcome some of those stereotypes?
Sure. I love this question because, I think when we think about the challenges of, just racism and those types of things that we see here in the United States mostly, I often tell people I grew up very Filipino, but when you look at me, I look black to most people, right? I mean, that's just period. There's not anybody walk up to me and say, "Hey, you're Filipino." That never happens. And so, number one, I grew up very Filipino, but have been challenged with everything that Black people have been challenged with. And I am half Black. So at the end of the day, I am still Black. But it's interesting to me because I didn't grow up as Black as people would think. I grew up a lot more Filipino. And so, a lot of the stereotypical things about Black people have happened to me when I felt like I was more Filipino than being black. And then on the flip side, I'm always advocating for Asians because obviously there's always that stigma of Asians can't drive, Asians eat odd animals, which my mom would tell you, we do, son, we eat dog. My mom. I used to fight with people over stuff like that, but at the end of the day, it's those types of things that I think I've dealt with a lot, and every culture has, problems or challenges and people who can't drive. But I did want to point out today that, one of the most significant new upcoming F1 drivers happens to be Bianca Bustamante, who is now a F1 driver and a Filipino.
Nice. That's awesome. And so, excuse me, what role do you believe Asian Pacific Americans play in shaping and enriching American society today?
I think we play a significant role. You grow up Filipino, and there's kind of two things as a Filipino Asian Pacific Island. I think it translates probably to all cultures, but obviously, number one, it's like you are pushed to figure out what you want to do that's going to impact the world. And so, for us, we're always involved in either church or some type of giving association, whether it's feeding the homeless or doing things like that. So being community driven is one thing. And then the other thing is for your professional self. Most of the time, all of us are being driven towards the medical field or being a lawyer or an engineer. And it always seems to be something that like we know is going to help the world, right? If you become a doctor or if you become an engineer, you're helping to make the world better. So a lot of Filipinos grow up that way. Maybe this is stereotypical, but there's probably not a hospital in this country that doesn't have a Filipino nurse or a Filipino doctor. Filipinos are engineers all over the place, lawyers all over the place as well. And then I would say second thing is you're always taught to have a talent. So either you sing or you play an instrument or you dance, something, right? You're always taught to have a talent, do karate, something, right? And so that's kind of like your secondary thing, or playing sports. I know for me, it was dancing was my talent. My mom was a singer. My mom sang all the way up until she passed a few years ago, consistently as well. And so in saying all that, I think we're very well-rounded people that look to influence the world in a manner of, number one, bringing our family values, right? So, like I said, most Filipinos, their friendships don't end at work. We bring you home, right? And we want to hang out with you at home. And a lot of the time, you will end up becoming one of our best friends, and you'll become a friend of our family at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think number two is just from a professional sense, bringing that into the work environment helps to create kind of the family value culture within businesses, within other industries across the world. So I think we influence in a positive way by bringing in our family values and our cultures into the workspace.
That is awesome. Bobby, I just learned something about you. I didn't know you used to be a dancer.
I used to be a dancer.
That
I
is so
absolutely did.
cool.
Yes. I used to be a dancer. I think about this all the time. I wish I was a dancer today because we didn't have social media. Um, but a lot of the people I grew up with know that, it started with breakdancing for me and then turned into hip hop. And I used to compete all the time. I used to have a bunch of trophies. Dancing was a big deal for me when I was growing up.
That's dope. So now at the IOBSE conference in August, you're going to be dancing.
I'm usually dancing at the conference. I just don't know. I don't have all the super duper dope moves that a lot of these young folks have today. But if we want to get down with like the WAP or the Running Man, I'll show y'all what's up.
That's dope. So, can you share a memorable experience or an event that highlights the richness and diversity of Asian Pacific American culture?
Yeah, I think for me being Filipino, the biggest one, there's probably a couple. Number one for us again, very Latin influenced. We have something very close to a quinceañera. I don't know if you've heard of a
Mhm.
quinceañera, right?
Yeah.
For Filipinos, we celebrate the female turning 18. It's called a debut. Very similar to a quinceañera, pretty much the same exact thing, except that it's 18 and we call it a debut. And then one one tradition that really sticks with me the most is Christmas. Christmas is a really big deal for us, right? We don't just look to share Christmas with each other. It's a big deal for us to go to midnight mass on Christmas Eve. And then a lot of the times as well throughout my life, one of the bigger things that I remember during Christmas was we used to send care packages back to the Philippines. So we would spend 2, 3 weeks, all of us, going buying shoes and clothes and food and a lot of the things that our families in the Philippines didn't have. And we send these huge boxes. I'm not even kidding, like massive boxes full of all this stuff and ship it back to the Philippines. So Christmas was always a bit extra, for me. I think it wasn't just about me getting gifts. It was also about going to midnight mass with our family. It was always about gathering all this stuff so we could share with our family overseas, and then also whatever opportunity that we could to give back in our communities. It was always wrapped around Christmas.
Nice. That is awesome. Christmas is also one of my favorite holidays too, but I wish I would knew you as a kid. I want to see what's in those boxes.
Those are some Nikes, Jordans, you name it, man. I mean, sweatsuits, jeans. We would spend, for me as a kid, you'd get mad because you'd be like, well, what am I getting? But, you were
Yeah.
buying stuff for everybody else. And now that I think back to it, it was actually it was a lot of effort that we put in being able to do that. And those boxes ended up being really, really cool.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, that's an absolute blessing to be able to bless others within your culture and being able to help them out during a time that's so precious to other people. So I think that is absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
Um, and so how do you create Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, and why is it important to you? Like, how do you celebrate it? What do you typically do during the month of May?
It's interesting. During Black History Month, a lot of people will say, well, I celebrate it every day. It's
Yes.
the same. So I celebrate Black History Month every day. I celebrate, Asian Pacific Islander Month every day. Um, probably more so on the Asian side because I eat very Asian to this day. But during this month, I make it a point to, go out and just experience all the cultures from all the different Asian communities. I happen to live very close here in LA to lots of Asian communities. So there's a lot of opportunities for me to eat Korean and go hang out with my Korean friends. And that's the other thing, too. I have a lot of Asian friends as well. So I have everything from, Korean, Japanese, Chinese, Filipino, Samoan. I live in a very Polynesian area as well, and Hawaiian folks. And so we spend most of this month and just like eating Korean barbecue or Hawaiian food or Filipino food. I have a buddy of mine who's a chef. He's a Filipino chef, and he does a lot of Filipino influenced dishes as well. So most of this month is really spending time with a lot of those friends and those families and just experiencing their cultures as well.
That's awesome. And so, are there any cultural practices or traditions that you incorporate in your daily life now?
Yeah, I think if you know me, I think hopefully you feel like I respect people. Number one, I think that's a big influence in my life coming from my family is just being very respectful for people towards people, especially elders, people who are older than me. Even though I'm getting old, I'm going to be the elder. So next time I see you, Alex, remember right hand to forehead.
I got you.
Um, but at the same time, I think the family values is also another thing. You know, I think that the way that I work and the way that I lead, that family value is woven in there. And throughout my career, I could think to so many people who are very good friends of mine now that come from the workplace, right? And
Mhm.
that has translated over into them being some of my best friends in this industry. Obviously, a lot of the folks from the IOBSE, a lot of the people that I work with at Meta and in my prior career, I stay in touch with. If you know me, I stay in touch with you. I'm always reaching out. I'm always checking in, and sometimes it's a lot, but at the same time, it's just the way that I'm built.
Mhm. Absolutely. That's very true. That is very
Yes.
true. And so, if you had to give any advice to the younger generations of Asian Pacific and African Americans who are navigating their identity and their heritage, what advice would you give them?
The best advice that I could give them is go find your elders and go
Mm.
listen to stories. Go pick up, your Lola or your Tita or your Tita Tio or your Tia or your Tio or whatever it is, right, in your family. Go spend some time with them, and try to understand where y'all come from. And if you have the opportunity to go home to, where your family is from, do that as well. I will raise my hand. I'm one of those people who has never been to the Philippines myself. It's on my bucket list of things to do real in the very near term, is to go home and see my family in the Philippines so I could really get to experience the culture within the country, is what I'll say. So if you have that opportunity, take it. We all want to go to Bali and Dubai and all these great places, but that's all fine and dandy. But pick a time where you can get to learn about yourself and your family and lean on your elders to understand where y'all come from. And where your family background really comes from within the country as well. My family is from Manila. We're a very Spanish influenced family. So I have everything from Lopez, Gonzalez, Ima Gutierrez, Hernandez. last names within my family. And if you look at my family, they are very Spanish looking. And so, there's a lot of history within my family that we talk about where we come from. My grandmother was also half Chinese. So at the same time, I'm a little bit Chinese. So, being able to understand those things and don't just walk around being busy and being a professional, spend some time with your family and learn about where you come from.
That's
And
dope.
then also, last thing I will say is learn about other Asians and other cultures, and even within our black, within the black community as well. A
Mhm.
lot of people look at us just being black, but some of us are Filipino, some of us are Puerto Rican, some of us are Cuban, some of us are Dominican Republican. Obviously, a lot of us are from Africa, but there's also different sides of Africa as well. And so being able to understand the cultural aspect behind the color is, I think, a big deal as well.
Absolutely. Well, Bobby, we are at time, but I wanted to just say thank you for taking the time to chat with us, especially as a part of the Early Career Professionals Committee, a part of the International Organization of Black Security Executives, and giving us a kind of a high level overview view and deep dive of Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. And so we just wanted to say thank you and we appreciate you.
No problem, Alex. And thank you for talking to me. I appreciate it.